For this presentation, the persuasive interview, the persuader conducting the interview, is out of Chapter 10 of our book, The Interviewing Practices and Principles. Opening the interview. You must gain attention and interest of the person that you're going to interview. You want to greet them warmly, firm handshake, and introduce yourself and get their name so that you know their name and you can use it throughout your greeting. You want to establish a rapport with this person, which means you want to get to know them. You want to get to know what they want, what they like. You can use simple things like the weather is nice. How, do you like sports? Or, like around this area, everybody likes the Chiefs or the Royals and the Cardinals. And somebody might say, how do you feel about those Cardinals? And so on. And you can just make an easy conversation to build rapport. Motivate the interviewee to take part. You ask questions that force them to interact with you. It forces them to answer. Just like, oh, I see you drive a Ford Focus. How do you like that car? It forces them to answer and kind of warm up to you and take part in your questions. With the persuasion interview, you want to tailor your message to the person or party that you're talking to. You do not want to be a standard message at all because you are trying to persuade them for something. So you want to tailor everything you do to that single person or party that you're talking to. So you need to adapt to that person. You need to observe their body language, observe their appearance, observe their clothing, what they're driving, what kind of shoes they're wearing, what kind of phone they have. Ask questions. And when you ask those questions, let them answer and listen attentively. Do not cut them off. Just let them answer and listen. And if they keep going, just listen. You may have to kind of break it up if they just keep on going, but there's subtle ways that you can do that. And then you're going to determine what they like and what they don't like. You're going to determine their preferences over what they don't want to do or what they don't like. So just adapting to that person, observing them, asking questions, and listening will help you to determine how to approach this person. Roughly 75% of all sales representatives fail in the attention step, which means they are either rushing right into the sales pitch or they are not taking the time to get to know their customer. You open with techniques and principles discussed in Chapter 4. We talked about warm greeting, introducing yourself, talking about, in this kind of situation, they're probably going to come to you in a sales situation, so you don't really have to tell them about the company. But in that same greeting, instead of telling them about the company, you could tell them about the sales that are going on or deals that are going on that day. You get the interviewee's name, so you can use the interviewee's name. If you don't know their name, you would address them as sir or ma'am and be polite and so on, just like we discussed in Chapter 4. This orientation is essential, but be brief. You're wanting to move on to the meat of the interview, but you do want to get to know your customer. So don't drag it out, but don't be so short that you just cut them completely off. You want to build the rapport, like I talked about. Inquire about their family and their mutual friends, the weather, sports, and just anything that you think would interest them to get them to talk to you. Make small talk. Do not socialize. Small talk and socializing are two different things. Small talk is getting to know that person, getting to know their likes, getting to know what they want out of something. Socializing is just talking about random stuff that has absolutely nothing to do with why they're there or why you are there. Do not prolong the rapport. Do not wait too long to start the rapport, and do not rush through the rapport at all, but it should be sweet and short and sweet. So you get to know their likes. You ask them a couple questions. Great, that's great. I'm glad that you like that car. I'm glad that you like this, and just move on. Most people, especially when they go into a store to buy something and they're talking to salespeople, they just want to get to the point. They want to get to the point why they're there and what they're wanting to accomplish while they are there. So they don't want to get stuck in this 20 questions with you about the weather, family, and mutual friends, and so on. They want you to hurry up and get to the point. Involve everyone in the group. From a sales standpoint, whenever you're in a store and you have someone walk in, sometimes it's not just one person. Sometimes it's not just two people. Sometimes it's a whole family. And if you involve the whole family in the decision making and in the process, it makes a stronger bond between you and that group. Especially with kids, they always feel left out whenever they go into a sales situation with their parents. They're bored. They don't want to be there. They could care less. But if the salesman is including them, the parents are happy because it shows the salesman is paying attention to that there is a child there, and the child doesn't feel as left out because they are being included. You want to create a mutual interest between you and everyone in that group, so you can establish trust and affection toward the parties in the group. You want to link them to each other and link them to you, so they have a bond with you and you have a bond with them. It makes it easier to build that relationship and to be able to go on the process of the persuasion of the interview. And then each party should understand the purpose of what you are trying to accomplish, whether it be in a sales pitch, which mostly the persuasion one is probably going to be a sales pitch. So you want to make sure that what you're getting ready to present to the party that's there is completely understood. And so whenever you start presenting it, they don't get all confused and wonder what the heck you're talking about. So make sure that you make it clear of what the purpose is that you're going to be speaking to them about. Whenever you create a need or desire, you're developing in detail 3 to 4 points, a minimum of 3 to 4 points. You need to have very strong points. Introduce them in order to be most effective. So what you think is the strongest point should be introduced first and go on down to the weakest. But don't just go straight through the list. You want to start with one point, explain it thoroughly before moving on to the next point. You want to encourage interaction while doing this and provide sufficient evidence, facts, authoritative facts about it, what people have said about it. Like whenever we have celebrities that endorse products that they use, that's an authoritative figure that has endorsed that product. And how recent the evidence, facts, or the studies have been, and how well documented it is. People tend to like it whenever they can see facts. They see somebody that they see in a larger standpoint as a celebrity or someone that is reputable, that is sponsoring the product, and they want to see that recent study. They don't want to see a study from 10, 15 years ago. They want to see one within the last 2 to 3 years. And they want to see the documentation that proves it. It just solidifies that that product is worth purchasing because of the facts and the endorsement and the studies and how well documented it is, that it has been researched thoroughly that this is a great product to have. You want to use questions strategically. In this type of interviewing session, you're rarely going to have a schedule of questions. There is, from a sales standpoint, and I'm going to keep referring to that because I have been in the sales world as a salesperson, so I'm kind of relating the two here. But rarely you have a schedule of questions. You do have a general list of questions that they like you to try to stay within, but you can change those around to the way you like them. And you can also change them around to the situation. So you rarely have a list of questions that you go straight down the list. Whenever you ask a question, you wait, you listen, you let them talk, you let them provide a answer, and try to get them to provide an answer that you want to hear. So that may require you to ask even more probing questions to get them to be more detailed in their answer and what exactly they are looking for and what you are looking for in asking those questions and getting those answers. Information gathering questions, they're going to do so much for you. It's going to determine the knowledge level the customer has of the product, or the knowledge level of what they think the product should do. It also determines the concerns the customer has about the product and concerns about purchasing it in long term. And it's also going to address their objections as well. One of the examples in the book says, tell me you're concerned about your current liability insurance. This is asking the customer to point out what they don't have or what they don't like about their current policy. And what the salesperson is doing is they're going to pick out those key terms or key points the customer makes about what they don't have, and they're going to find a policy that fits what they want and what replaces those concerns. So whenever you when you use these questions to gather the information, it gives you those bits and pieces that they're missing that they want, that you can plug in and sell them on that idea. Verification questions are really good because you are making sure you're understanding what the other person is saying and vice versa. That way you get a clear understanding of what they're trying to get to and what they're asking and what they're wanting. There are going to be probing questions to verify the assumptions. Whenever somebody asks you something, you're going to say, you mean by saying this, that this is going to do this for me. But beware of silence by the interviewee. If there is silence, they are confused or lost. And you may have to reiterate what you have previously said or ask them if there's something they don't understand. One of the examples in the book that it gives for the verification questions is, are we in agreement that a desktop computer would serve your needs and financial situation better than a laptop? And that's just one of those verification questions. It means that you've already kind of went through the pros and cons of a desktop computer and the pros and cons of a laptop computer and what best fits that customer's needs and wants. Encouraging interaction with the questions. Use questions early to warm up. You don't go diving straight in. You're going to do small little questions leading up to what you really want to know. It's also going to set the tone. They're going to know that you're not rushing into everything. And they're going to feel a little bit more comfortable with that because you're not pushing them. And people, when they're buying something, do not like pushy salespeople. It gives you encouraging the interaction questions is you ask questions and then you talk and then the answer becomes more natural because you're warming up, you're getting them involved to answer your questions, and they also will engage and have questions for you. You want to encourage the interviewee to interact. The more you interact with the interviewee, you're going to build a relationship and you're going to build that rapport, and the interviewee is going to be way more comfortable with you the more you are interacting with them and having them interact with you. It leaves you more open to give meaningful feedback and them to give you feedback, because whenever you take the time to get to know a person, to understand their needs and wants, and answer all of their questions thoroughly and include them in everything, they are going to let your sales managers know that you're a good salesperson to work with and that you understand and you're not just shoving them out the door. Even though it is your job to be there to sell, but it is also your job to be there to inform and to leave them satisfied. And then this is a big one in the sales world because they're going to go back and tell all their friends to come see you because you're such a great salesperson and you relate to people well as they're going to give repeat business. So these are very important that you get the interaction between you and the other person. And one of the examples that it gives in the book is, what are your thoughts about purchasing the hybrid model? So this is showing after they've kind of explained it and they've done the warm-up and everything, and then they're going to ask them what their thoughts are to get their thoughts on what you have said. Attention and interest questions. You want to keep the interviewee's attention. You want to keep them interested, and you want to keep their thoughts going. So thought-provoking questions and challenging questions. You want your customers to interact with you, so you need to ask questions that keep them interested and keep them interacting with you. And then one of the questions in the book says, what would you do if someone stole your identity? So this is going to put the person in one of those situations where they're going to say, oh my gosh, I don't know what I would do. I have this and that. And then they would be able to help them to keep that from happening if that's what they were specializing in. Agreement questions. You want to obtain small agreements throughout the process. That's going to lead to the bigger agreements, and it's going to lead to the agreement at the end. The agreement at the end is going to finalize everything. Agreement only after each point has been made. So you want to have an agreement after each point And then after you've went through all the points, you want to have an agreement to that leads to the end, and then you're going to ask closed-end questions. And then the examples in the book says, with the market about to rebound, this seems to be a great time to invest. Don't you agree? And this would be a yes or no question. I mean, of course, they can elaborate on why it is a yes or no, but it leaves the question closed-ended. They can answer with just a yes or no. Objection questions. Questions to tactfully respond to objections. This is really hard in the sales world to respond to objections. I've actually found it to be the hardest because nobody likes being, rejected in their efforts. So whenever they have objections, you want to draw them out at the right time. New discovery about the interviewee. Every time they have an objection, it gives you a new discovery about what the interviewee wants and does not want. So don't take the objection questions as you're doing a bad job and you're not persuading like you should be. It just means that they haven't told you something that they're looking for. And so they're going to object because it hasn't met that need yet. And once they object, you can get that need and change it up and then tailor it to what they want. One of the examples in the book says, you say cost is a major concern in purchasing a hybrid SUV, but what would you pay over the next 5 years for gasoline on a non-hybrid SUV? So this is comparing the hybrid SUV to a non-hybrid SUV and then the price of gasoline. What is more important, the cost of the car or the cost of how much the gasoline is going to cost you in the long term? So it just gives you a way, whenever they throw that objection out there, you can weigh the pros and cons and answer that objection and help them decide whether it's worth it. Adapting to the interviewee. You should be adapting to the interviewee throughout the whole process, but you want to tailor each part of the interview to the interviewee, like I've said before. You want to select the appropriate tactics and strategies. So you're going to pay attention to what they're saying and what they're doing so that you can adapt what you're saying and what you're providing to them to be appropriate to their situation. So you need to get to know the interviewee and their values, beliefs, and attitudes. Because depending on what they value and their beliefs and attitudes are, one thing may be great for them, but another thing is going to be completely the wrong thing. So you want to make sure that you are tailoring what you are persuading them to do based on their values, beliefs, attitudes, and their criteria of what they want and what you're trying to get them to buy or do. Indecisive and uninterested interviewees. These happen all the time. I know a lot of people, especially in sales, that don't want to buy the first time. They want to keep coming back, especially in cars and houses. That's a big buy, and it's a long process. So you want to make sure you educate who you're trying to sell to or who you're trying to persuade. You want to educate them the best possible. Make sure you've answered all of their questions. You want to give them the reality of the urgency of the problem. So, if it's like, say, an electronic, like a computer or a TV, and you're trying to sell them to them, you may say, okay, I understand that you want to think about this, but this TV is only on sale at this price until tomorrow. After tomorrow, it goes back to its normal price. So that is relaying to the interviewee the reality and urgency of the issue of buying that particular product. And then you can go on to the issue or need. You may need it now. If your washing machine goes out and you go to buy a washing machine, you've got to make a decision. So you have a need. You have an issue at home and you have a need that you have to buy one, so you have to make a choice. It's just different situations. It gets the interviewee's attention that you know that they either need this or they don't, and it also lets you tell them, so that way they don't come back in 2 days and it's not on sale, and you're like, and they're telling you, wait a minute, this was on sale. Why isn't it on sale now? Well, you didn't tell them that, so they didn't create a sense of urgency. So get their attention by telling them all that useful information, and then you're going to lead with your strongest points and go down the list again. You're going to provide evidence of why they need it, why they need to take it home, and why they can't do without it. Avoid real or perceived pressure. You don't want to pressure them. You are kind of doing that in a way, but you don't want to be pushy. You want to say, I understand your concern, and then answer the concern and go from there. But don't say, you really need to buy this today. Don't say that. You just say, I understand your concern. I understand where you're coming from. I understand that's a lot of money. And then just let them know and be nice about it. You get, and like I said before, you can emphasize the urgency to act now if it's a sale item. Moderate fear appeals to awaken the interviewee. You don't want to give them so much fear that they just want to walk out, or they don't feel good at the end of the sale, or they don't feel good at the end of the meeting, because you don't want that. Moderate fear appeals to awaken the interviewee because if they really need that item, or they know they have to have that item within X amount of time, and that item's not going to be on sale in 5 days, but it's on sale for the next 2, then that's a little bit of fear to go ahead and buy that product. It lets them know they have to act quickly. So it is a little bit of fear, but it's not a fear that makes them feel horrible at the end of the meeting. Hostile interviewees. You want to hear the interviewee out. And you get this a lot of customer service. You get a lot of hostile interviewees because they are upset about something didn't go right. They're just mad. So let them speak their piece. Let them get it all off their chest. Just listen. And do not mistake concerns or objections as hostile. There are a lot of people who get upset about things and they express that they're upset about it, but they may not be hostile. And do not mistake a gruff demeanor for hostility. I know that I've encountered this. I've had people come in that just seem so angry and bitter, and they're really not. They just kind of have a gruff demeanor, like it says, and you just have to get them to warm up to you and you to warm up to them, and just approach them as nicely as possible. That old saying that you get more bees with honey is so true, especially in customer service and in sales. But if they're truly hostile, determine why. Find a common ground with them. Whenever you find out why they are so upset, let them speak their piece so you can see why they're upset, and then find common ground. You can say, I understand. I've had this happen before. I've had that happen before. And I'm going to try to help you as best as I can. And so you just go with it that way. You can have a yes but approach, and that begins with the areas of agreement and similarity, and gradually leads into points of disagreement to lessen hostility and disagreement later by establishing a common ground early on. So you want to establish that common ground so you can relate to them and they feel a little bit better that you know what's going on and you understand the situation. A yes approach gets an interviewee in the habit of agreeing whenever you reach an apparent disagreements. And then the implicative approach withholds an explicit statement of purpose or intent to avoid a knee-jerk negative reaction from the interviewee. You want the interviewee to see the implications of what you are saying, perhaps feeling they came up with the concern and the solutions. You want to listen, be polite, and do not get angry with them. The more you get angry with them, the more they're going to escalate, and they're going to get even more mad. And this is just going to create a really bad situation for everybody involved. So the best thing to do is let them speak whenever they've got something to get off their chest. Let them get it off their chest. Be polite. Be understanding. Find that common ground. And just be nice. Even I have found that I've had some very irate customers before. And the nicer that I am, they slowly come back down. And you can even talk a lot quieter. And the quieter you talk, they have to be quieter. And then they have to kind of lean in to listen to you. So it kind of calms them down. So you have to be polite and listen to them. And you can employ shock absorber phrases. And these shock absorber phrases can help them calm down. It reduces the sting of the critical questions. So whenever they get really, really mad, I understand. And then whenever they have a solution, you can say, oh, I'm glad you thought of that. Or I would have never thought of that. And then you just kind of get into it and help them understand the problem and situation and help them work through it a little bit. Closed-minded and authoritative interview It relies on trusted authorities or interviewee. These people are not open to very many new things, and they buy things only that are endorsed by, like big companies, or like it's like going to a store and buying name brand versus off brand. These people are going to buy name brand because they trust the name. So they want it to be endorsed by something big, something they know. They're concerned about who supports it. If it's not supported by a certain organization or group, they're not going to buy it. They're not going to have anything to do with it. And so they're just not even going to pay attention. They want to know who supports it. And facts alone will not convince these people. They are strong and unchangeable in their values and beliefs. These are hard to deal with. You need to identify yourself and proposal with the values. You do not bypass the hierarchy channels and do not have a negative reaction, and because it may demand punishment on your part. This is almost like treating a hostile interviewee, because you're going to want to be as polite as possible. You're going to listen to them. You're going to address all their concerns. The best thing to do is to show them how to do it, or to show them the advantages, like actually physically show them. Because whenever people see it, they believe it more. And if you help them, and so they're seeing and doing it, they're more likely to be open up to it and to warm up to it and grasp it. Skeptical interviewees. These people usually always have the questions and are just not sure, but express views the interviewee holds. The yes but approach and the yes approach. Maintain positive nonverbal cues. Firm handshake, eye contact, friendly manner, appropriate address, smile. Do not act like you're mad or annoyed, because they will pick up on that. Present the qualifications. Tell them about your experiences, training, and authoritative evidence, which means who is sponsoring it or who endorses the product. Be prepared for these interviewees, because they are hard. They may not be as hard as the skeptical or the closed-minded interviewees, but they are really hard to help and to sell to. But avoid the informality and avoid a cocky attitude. A lot of people tend to get really irritated with these people, and they start throwing out their credentials, and they start getting, I've done this and I've done this and I've never had this problem. Don't do that. You have to stay calm. You have to stay focused, because you want to avoid a confrontation with these interviewees, and they can be challenging because they're so skeptical. They question everything you say. They question every fact, everything you have prepared. They will question it all. So you want to present everything in a polite and calm manner. You want to present the company, and if they address the misconceptions, you need to come back with the facts about it, and apologize for the past of the misconceptions of the company, and put the truth out there, and tell them how the company has changed and how the company has worked to change that and fix that, and now explain the strengths. So you just have to reinforce this interviewee constantly that things are going for the better and are going to work out for the better. They're really hard interviewees. Shopping around interviewees. These people are this, I'm just looking. I just want to look, and I'm not buying today. So they're counter persuasion. So you provide support for their arguments and evidence for what they're wanting in their answers, and respond to their questions or points thoroughly. Because you do want this, even if they don't buy today, or they don't come back today, and they don't do what you want them to do today, as long as you support them and you give them all the information and everything that they need, they will come back. So you want to develop a relationship, even though you know this is probably not going to end the way you want it to. But you can develop a relationship in small doses of opposition. You can provide strengths and weaknesses, and just as you are going to normally, but know that you're probably not going to close this one out. If they have truly decided that they are not going to close it, they're not going to close it. But you can give them everything they need to support them and develop a relationship with them and provide them with all the information that they need. Because like I said, they may come back and they want to sleep on it, or they want to think about it, or they have to talk to their significant other. But don't treat them with disrespect. I have seen it before where salespeople know they're not going to get the sale, so they want to shove them out the door so they can get on to the next salesperson, or to get on to the next customer so they can sell something and get their commission. This is the wrong approach, because they are still a customer and they're probably going to come back if you treat them right, and then they're going to tell their friends how they were treated. So you want to treat them as if you would treat any other customer. Intelligent and educated interviewees, they can be challenging, but they can also be, I have found them to be easier to deal with than the non-educated interviewees. You don't have to do as much persuading because they have a high knowledge level of the product or what you're trying to persuade them to do. They have already researched it, thought it through, and they know what they want and they know what they're looking for. They see through the good guy, bad guy approach. I see this a lot, and I'm probably one of these customers too, because I've been on the sales end of it so long that I know their tactics and I know how they're trained and how they are to approach people. So you read right through that whenever you go in as a customer. So they can see through this good guy, bad guy approach, and it doesn't work. So you need to support the ideas thoroughly, develop your arguments logically, and present two-sided approach, minimize emotional appeals, and encourage the interviewee to raise concerns and participate, because they have a high knowledge level of what is going on. So they may be more engaging, and it may make your job way easier if you just flow with them, because they know what they're doing, and you can kind of sit back and they're going to sell it to themselves because they're so educated. But you're still going to walk them through the process of what they don't know. You can ask them, oh, do you know about this? And they may say yes. Well, what did you know about this? And they may say no. So, bring out the new stuff that most customers, it's hard for you to explain to. It's going to be easy for you to explain to these customers. And presenting the solution, establish a criteria. So you're going to have your criteria. You're going to establish it by saying, you have presented me with these criteria you have to have, and this is what I have that will fit your criteria. So you evaluate all the possible solutions, and the process is natural because you've already went through everything. You've got their needs, wants, their values, beliefs, and attitudes, and so you can put this all in this package that you're wanting to persuade them to do. And so the process becomes natural. Not all criteria are of equal importance, but you need to find out what is most important to them. So that is the most important thing that you are trying to persuade. So you're going to establish a set of criteria. And the agreed upon criteria enable a foundation of agreements. So you have packaged this perfect product for them, or this perfect situation for them, because it fits every need and want that they need. And so they're going to agree to it. So considering the solution, you're going to present the solution in the detail. Do not assume that there is an understanding. You're going to have to reiterate and reassure this is what they want. Present as much information as possible, one solution at a time, because the customer is processing so much information that you're going to have to explain this in detail one at a time. The interviewee remembers 10% of what they hear, 50% of what they do, and 90% of what they see and do. So back to what I was saying about everything you're telling them, you're just rattling on. They're not going to take in very much of that. But if you have them actually do it, they're going to retain 50% of that. If you are explaining what they're doing at the same time they're seeing it and doing it, 90% of that will sink in. So whenever you go to Best Buy and they have all these game consoles plugged in and going, and they let you play them, and all the TVs going, and they let you change the channels, and the computers and the tablets and everything, and that is so you can see and do, and the salesperson can talk to you about the product. So you are educated about that product. It's very smart on their part, and they're one of the best places you can go to where you can actually have hands-on of everything that's majorly electronic. You're going to avoid negative selling. You're just not negative throughout this whole process. You're not going to be, saying what's bad and what you don't need and what you do need and pushing the customer around. Avoid that negative selling. Advantages are better than disadvantages. So make sure you go back over the advantages of the product. You don't have to skip over the disadvantages of the product, just don't stress them as much as the advantages of the product. You're going to encourage questions and active involvement throughout the whole thing. And repetition, like I said, and educate. The more you repeat and the more you educate, the more customer knows, and the more the customer is going to be comfortable with you and the situation. Handling objections, encourage the objections, because they need more information, they have more concerns, they have more fears, and they're misunderstanding or not getting the information. So do not assume an agreement, and watch for the nonverbal cues of the restlessness and the fidgeting and the poor eye contact. Whenever they do this, it means that they're not getting something or they're not understanding it and they need more information. So make sure you have them interacting with you throughout this whole process, asking questions and understanding everything. And approaching the objections, anticipate the objections, plan for the objections, listen for them, clarify the answers to the objections, and respond to them. And minimize objections by restating their objection and compare to the other situations. And capitalize on the objections by clarifying points made throughout the process. Review your proposal, offer more evidence, and isolate motive of objection, why they're concerned about this and why they're objecting about this, and what is important to why this objection is being asked, and convert the disadvantage into an advantage. And how to approach the objections. Again, deny an objection directly or indirectly. The more accurate information you have, the harder it is for them to object it. You can also bring out new features to the proposal, something that you may have not covered, and you want to prove it. So you're going to have that documentation to prove everything that you're providing to them. And confirm the objection, agree with the interviewee, be honest, and do not offer weaknesses. Because the more weaknesses you offer, the more objections they're going to have, and the more they're going to push back on the persuading of whatever you're persuading, whether it be a product or something else. And then closing the interview, you have the trial closing, watch and listen for cues. After asking closing questions, listen to them, let them self-persuade, because if you've done your job, they're going to agree to everything that they went through. If they say no, ask why. Review the criteria to make sure you hit everything, because if they're saying no, there's a reason, there's something you missed. And ask for more information. If they say yes, lead to the contract, which is the contract or the agreement part of closing the interview. It's an assumptive close because they've said yes. So you're going to summarize everything that they've went through. And it's an elimination of a single objection, or you're going to do the elimination of a single objection close. Either or close. I'll think it over close, sense of urgency close, or price close emphasis. So you're going to have one of those closes. Leave taking, you're going to conclude pleasantly. Do not let this be abrupt. Don't be like, oh, thank you, see you later, bye. You don't want to do that. You want to, I thank you for your patience. I thank you for listening, and just go through, you appreciate their time, and be sincere about it. Don't conclude abruptly and just shove them right out the door. You want to let them leave as pleasantly as they've walked in, if they walked in pleasantly. The key terms for this part of chapter 10 was abrupt or curt, which is short and often rude responses or curtailing of interactions. Counter persuasion aimed at an interviewee by a persuader's competitor or an antagonist following a persuasive interview. Implicative approach, an approach that withholds an explicit statement of purpose or intent until the interviewee sees the implications and suggests a course of action. Intelligent interviewee, an interviewee with high levels of intelligent or informal education. Leave taking, the effort to bring an interview to a close. Negative selling, the attempt to persuade by attacking another or another's proposal rather than supporting yourself or your proposal. Shock absorber, phrases that reduce the sting of critical questions. Yes, but approach, an approach that begins with areas of agreement and approaches points of disagreement after goodwill and a supportive climate are established. A yes approach, the attempt to get another party in the habit of saying yes so agreements may continue. And that is it for my presentation on this part of the chapter that we're working on, conducting the interview, the persuasive interview. Thank you very much.